Chair Schmidt, you may begin.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock on January 24th, 2022. Welcome to the City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all those in attendance, please note that the Planning Commission meeting is being held using the Zoom webinar format, so you will see that the planning commissioners and staff are panelists. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the raise hand button located at the bottom of your screen. Members of the public who are participating in Zoom webinar by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. You may also send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. If you're an applicant or an applicant's representative, I will ask you to raise your hand when your agenda item is up for discussion so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. We ask that you also turn on your video at that time so that we may have more clear communication, simulating the experience we would have if we were meeting in person. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. Moving on to agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that all members of the commissioners are present this evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest planning commissioner, Commissioner Pfaff. She's joining us for the first time this evening, but not the first time joining us.
Thank you.
So anyway, moving on, we have some minutes to approve from the January 10th, 2022 Planning Commission regular meeting. Do we have any comments, changes, or discussions regarding the meeting minutes? Commissioner Tronis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sent in some edits earlier today, and I noticed the revised copy that was sent out by Ruben earlier this afternoon. So I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended for January 10th, 2022.
Great, and I'll second that. So motion by Commissioner Tronis, seconded by myself. No further discussion. Let's vote.
And just for Commissioner Pfaff's benefit, if she did read the minutes, she can vote yay. If she did not, she could abstain.
I did not read them.
Okay. Commissioner Camarado.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Goff.
I didn't read them.
Abstain. Commissioner Taronis.
Aye.
Commissioner Say.
Aye.
And Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-1-0. And now we move on to the agenda. Do we have any changes for the agenda today?
No, Chair Schmidt, no changes to the agenda.
Okay. And do we have any recusals at this time?
Yes. Sorry. I'm not going to vote on 1357 because I commented as a member of the public.
Okay. Great. Okay, then we don't vote to approve this agenda, right?
Nope.
We just move on. Got it. Okay, so now we're moving on to item number 5, public comments, non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item that is not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comments period. The Ralph Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time. I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly and into the microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands at this point. Are there any email comments or anything else that have come in?
No, there are not.
Okay. Great, then seeing none, I'll move on to the next item. Okay, we do not have any study items for this evening. We do not have any consent calendar, so moving on to item number 8, regular action items. We have item 8A, 1357 Bernal Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Or any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant proposes to replace the existing single unit dwelling at 1357 Bernal Avenue and build a new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage. The applicant is requesting a special permit for a building height of 35 feet and 2 inches. As mentioned in the staff report, the lot slopes upward from the front property line with the finished floor proposed at 10 feet, 7 inches above average top of curb level. For reference, the finished floor of the existing house is 13 feet above the average top of curb level. The Planning Commission reviewed this application as a design review study item at its last meeting on January 10th. In that meeting, commissioners suggested reducing the height of the front porch gable in order to mitigate the proposed height of the house above street level. In summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a new 2-story single unit dwelling and detached garage and a special permit for building height. The applicant is available for further questions, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Great. Do we have any questions, commissioners? Okay, seeing none, then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Chair Schmidt, it appears that the applicant is not in attendance.
Okay.
If perhaps the property owner is available, if he can raise his hand, but I don't see anybody.
So, oh, did I see it? No, it was just my one microphone. Okay, well, memory from last meeting, we didn't have a whole lot of concerns. We had some minor comment of which was addressed. I'm not seeing, unless somebody's feeling like they have a burning question for the applicant that isn't here, can we not move forward and make a motion on this one anyway?
That's correct. You do still want
Okay.
to check to see if there's any members of the public,
Right.
but then you can close the public hearing.
Okay, so then since we do not have the attendee in attendance, then if there's anyone else who wishes to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, not seeing any hands. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any comments or concerns? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, thank you. Well, since I made the request that they revisit the front porch, I'll just say that I think it might be, it's a relatively minor change, but I think it's important. And I'm grateful that they made that change and were willing to do so. I think it really helps that front facade, particularly because of the way that this property is raised so far above the sidewalk. I think it really helps bringing down the scale of that front porch. So with that in mind, I think that the project is approvable at this point, in my opinion. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Vice Chair Loftus.
I agree with Commissioner Toronis, and I will move that we approve the project with the changes.
Okay. Commissioner Camarado, did you have any comments before we go?
I agree with my fellow commissioners, and I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Loftus and a second by Commissioner Camarado. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Torronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0-1-0. And an action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $708, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to item 9, design review study, item 9A, 121 Occidental Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you also turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Okay, seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant proposes to replace the existing two-story single-unit dwelling and detached garage at 121 Occidental Avenue with a new two-story single-unit dwelling with a detached garage. The property currently contains a swimming pool that is proposed to be retained and refurbished under a separate permit. In summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a new two-story single-unit dwelling and detached garage. The applicant is available for questions, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I know that it was not, Kevin, it was not included in the floor area calculation, but the attic clearly has a ridge height of, close to 8 feet and a lot of space up there that's over 5 feet. Is that not included in the FAR?
I'd want to look at the exact kind of plan check. Generally, if the lowest parts are not counted, and then if there's any part of the height that is, I'm blanking on the ceiling height that is when we start counting, but parts of that would not be counted.
Yeah, I was just looking at the section on sheet A 4.0. It looks like a big room up there to me, but I don't know if that should be counted or if it, I don't think it was counted.
If I may say, generally we don't count attic areas unless they're accessible from the interior with a permanent stairwell and they're more than 5 feet in height.
Would that include a pull down stair?
No, if there's a pull down stairs, it does not get counted. It has to be a permanent stair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Okay, perfect. Okay, if we don't have any further questions, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project? You're on mute, Tim. There you go.
Got it. Good evening, Commission. We are removing an existing house and putting up a new craftsman style house using, very traditional detailing. You've seen some of the preliminary 3Ds. They will get better on the next go around. I just kind of wanted to get you some views in 3D. I know it's super helpful. Colors, please do not shame me with the color right now. We're working on colors and things like that. Neighborhood reached to all the neighbors that are connected to this property. We haven't gotten any negative feedback. I'll just kind of give it up to the board for your comments, and we'll come back with a better submittal next period. And to comment to Commissioner Gall, we'll draw that attic as an actual truss. Normally we put the furnace in there because that's a good space for it, but we'll show it as per the city regulations. Currently, it's not included, and it will not be a finished space, even though you do see that there's windows up there. That's more of an architectural look that we're trying to obtain. Lastly, we're trying to keep the pool existing. We would, definitely refurbish it, but a main selling feature for this house is that pool. So, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Tim. Do you have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I did see that you had it look like the furnace and the water heater under the stair landing. So that was kind of.
Well, yeah, we would do two furnaces, one for the upstairs and one for the downstairs.
Okay.
So you don't have problems with dampering on the zones.
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. Actually, my main question is on the landscape or the site plan. The interesting lot that it had garnered a little bit of that back space, but my question has to do with the neighbor in the back. And are they actually, I'm not sure if I'm reading the plan properly, but is the fence going to stay where it is, or is the property owner, your client, going to give up that 5 feet or so that goes in a triangle on the back? Because there's a planter back there.
We'll talk to him. He's actually been in contact with me. We haven't really gone over specifics. We ended up actually talking about remodeling his house. So I will confirm that when we get going.
Because I think that could be a sticking point with him. Other than that, I don't see anything else. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Taranis?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Just a couple of drafting questions, and it might just be things that need to get fixed. I just want to confirm. On the right elevation at the stairwell, the drawing is shown without the siding on the upper portion of that stairwell. But then when I look at the front elevation, I look at the side of that stairwell, or what would be the side, and it looks like there is horizontal siding. So
it's just the drafting here. I'll fix
so
that.
what's it intended as? To have siding or not have siding?
Have siding, correct.
Okay, all right. So that just needs to get the siding laid on. Okay, my other question is, if we could look at the front elevation and maybe even compare it to the rendering. I'm looking at the attic windows that you have in that gable.
Yep.
And what's shown on the drawings, it seems a little fussy, but what you had in the rendering is better because the windows are a little wider and a little, they're more square. They look like attic windows. My fear is the narrow windows that you have shown on the elevation here, the proposed front elevation, comes time to get that from the window manufacturer, and the time it gets done, they're talking you out of making those windows that narrow, and then something changes. See the way you have them here, they're a little bit wider.
Yep. Definitely the 3D.
Okay, so if you could take a look at that and revisit. The other thing is that it's looking really fussy with the 3 knee braces. I don't know if it needs that much work. It looks like it's just trying really hard. And in my opinion, I think the 2 knee braces on either side of the windows are sufficient. But if you could take a look at that when you revisit those window sizes, I think these square ones like you have on the rendering work best, but I'll leave it to you if you could revisit that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then my one last comment is, I'm really impressed with the front porch and those porch columns that are really substantial. They're looking at the plan, I'm assuming that they're about 1'9" square, which I think is great. And so I think it's important for the impact of that front porch for it to have enough gravity relative to the upper floor. So I really hope that detail sticks with those front porch columns. So, thank you. That was it for my question.
Yes, thank you. Tim, can I just confirm my eyes, or I don't know, they're playing tricks with me, but are the plate heights 9 feet and 8 feet? No, 8'5"? Is that what it is?
It'll be 8'4.5". It probably was a dimension. It probably went to the nearest full dimension. We use 8-foot studs and we use 3 plates. So
I see.
It really makes a difference. It makes an 8'4.5" or 8'5" actually feels like 9. It's crazy. So that's what we've been doing lately.
Oh yeah, that's nice. I just wanted to clarify that. It's to me a little bit the upper floor looks heavier or taller than the lower floor. And certainly we've got, gable roofs versus hipped roofs. And I'm just wondering if proportionately there's some adjustment that that lower floor has a little bit more height to kind of balance out that upper floor that looks kind of tall. It reads a little bit better in your rendering, but in this frontal elevation that we're looking at in the plans, proportionately, it looks like the upper floor is just squashing the lower floor to me.
The section's already built and it is seemed to be like about 6 inches lower, so we could actually raise it up. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Foth.
Yes, I actually have questions. First of all, further on Commissioner Taronis's comment about the porch. First of all, I think this has the potential to be a really gorgeous house. Good job. But there's something that's bugging me about the front, and that it's a very symmetrical house. It's like some on Chapin couple that are very symmetrical and very big like this and beautiful. But this, it's not symmetrical because the porch on the bottom is just shifted to the right. It's not a lot to the right, so it doesn't look like it's done on purpose. It's sort of like caught. And I measured it. I was thinking maybe I'm not seeing it right. It looks like there's 14 feet on the left side of the columns to, from the door column to the left. And then from the other large column on the right-hand side, the right of the door, or I guess not quite the door, but almost, is 12'7". So it's kind of close, but it's not there. So it looks like, to me, it looks like a mistake. So I wonder, maybe you could look at that. Maybe I'm the only one it bothered, but I saw it again on the rendering. It just looks like, and it's not aligned. It's not really aligned with anything. So it's not aligned with the bottom, and it's not really aligned with the top either. So it's sort of a third dimension that I noticed, but maybe I'm the only one it bothers. And the other,
I will take a look at that. It kind of bothers me a little bit now.
yeah. And then, well, because you're going to have 4, very substantial columns, and they're not spaced right. I think it'll look funny, but okay. And the other thing is regarding the, are you married to the pear trees along the driveway? I only ask because they're pushed up right against the fence, and they'll be, knowing the way the sun goes, because we have the same arrangement in our house, the plants will grow all over on the other side. And I'm just thinking maybe something else, like maybe more of a pittosporum, like an evergreen that you can actually shape, and it will grow to a nice height. I don't know if they're married to the owners are married.
We are not. And I can also, what Greg's going to be, RG Development's going to be the contractor on this. He's also the landscaper. We normally reach out to the neighbors and confirm everything, but we'll put an option or a verifying field and give 2 options.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, I had the same sentiment as Jennifer did, Commissioner Pfaff did. I think that it just feels like there's that bottom floor is just not proportional, and it just needs to be moved over a slight bit. And also that I agree with Commissioner Taronis on the top window. I think it's just a little too busy up there.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions for the applicant, let's go out to the public and see if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak on this item, raise your hand now. Oh, here we go. Okay, Kim Doran, if you want to unmute yourself, and it's your turn.
Hey, it's Kim and Jason Doran. We live next door at 117 Occidental. And I guess we first want to say, first time seeing the plans, they look nice. Really just had two questions. One, would love to have the opportunity to talk to the designer and builder about landscaping on our side of the property. And two, we wanted to make sure that the height of the structures weren't going to exceed the current height of the building that's there now.
Okay. I'm sure that's, listening to the applicant already, they were planning to reach out to you guys, so I'm sure that will happen. And I'm sure that Tim can verify the height of the new versus the existing as well. Tim, you know that one offhand?
I mean, the house will be taller than the existing. And then also, did you get my letter? Probably like 3 or 4 months ago. We will.
We just moved in November.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll have someone drop it off to you in the morning. But yeah, we'll definitely work with you. The contractor is also the landscaper, which is great, and we'll do this offline and we'll talk to you. We definitely going to be coming back with comments, so we'll satisfy everything we need.
Thank you.
Great.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this point. So then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move to the commissioners. Is there anything that we haven't said yet? Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on the symmetricality. I was bothered at first by it, but the 3D image changed my mind. I think this is one of those instances where you're looking at a pure elevation, which is something that you actually never see. And you can't help but be struck by the symmetrical top and the symmetrical bottom that are unaligned. So my gut feeling is that that's a bigger deal than it's not as big a deal as folks might think it is. I was pretty compelled by the 3D image when he showed that, because I was going to raise the same issue, but I didn't feel that at all with the 3D. There are times when, maybe this is my modernist coming out, but there are times when something being slightly asymmetrical is not a bad thing. It's a positive thing. But I just wanted to weigh in on that. I think it's a very nice project, actually.
Commissioner Call.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, and it's kind of minor, but one thing that struck me was it appears that the light fixtures on the rear of the building are really large. If I'm estimating this correctly, with the one by siding being approximately 5 feet in, or 5 inches rather, in the exposed face, those are going to be those light fixtures to be about 2 feet tall. So I think it's just a scale issue, really minor, but I think, Tim, if you could just look at that, they just look kind of large on the elevations.
Okay. I would just like to thank Tim for the 3D images. Regardless of color or not, I thought they were fantastic. And I think that they make reading this project a lot easier. I understand the line work because it's what I do too, but the line work sometimes gets in the way of the understanding the aesthetic. And so I really appreciate the 3Ds that you showed this evening, because that makes all the difference in the world in this project. So thank you. That's it for me. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Tronis.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to bring this back on regular action, and just request that when this comes back, if we could get a copy of those 3D renderings with the packet, I think that would be helpful.
I'll second that.
Right, we have a motion by Commissioner Tronis and a second by Vice Chair Loftus. Any further discussion? No, then let's vote.
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Fopp,
Aye.
Commissioner Veteronis,
Aye.
Commissioner Say,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 7000. Congratulations. We'll see you next time. Okay, moving on to item number 9B, 2201 Hillside Drive. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review and a front setback variance for a single-story addition to an existing single-unit dwelling. The property is a corner lot at the intersection of Hillside Drive and DeSoto Avenue, and it's an existing two-story house with just an attached garage at the lower level. The applicant is proposing single-story additions to the existing house, which require design review for two reasons. First, because the addition at the entry to the main dwelling has a plate height of 10 feet 8 inches. And also because the addition at the upper split level raises the existing plate line. The applicant is also requesting a variance for proposed front setback of 15 feet 4 inches, where the required front setback is the average of the block, or in this instance, 20 feet 1 inch. The proposed project includes an attached 1-bedroom ADU, which is at the rear of the lot, and both of the new entries for the main dwelling and the ADU will face DeSoto Avenue. That concludes the staff report, and I can take any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for staff at this point? Okay, I have a question. Given that the entrance is now moving from Hillside Drive to DeSoto, does that somehow change their address, or how does somebody know that they're on Hillside Drive and where the address is located?
Yes, I believe, first of all, the ADU will be required to have the same numerical address, but it'll be alphanumerical where it has an A after the address, and Public Works will require that they change the address to DeSoto Avenue for both the unit and the main unit and the ADU.
Okay. Then the location of the address will be fine. Okay. Then if we don't have any further questions for staff, then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything else you wish to tell us about your project?
Hi, James Chu, Chu Design Associates. We actually applied for a street address change by Public Works Department already. So the new address will be on DeSoto. This is a major improvement to an existing two-story. There's a lot going on. It's all because of different plate height. And we try to design something that would look originally like it was built 40 years ago. So I really don't have anything much to add, and like to answer any question you may have.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant at this point? Vice Chair Loftus.
Could you walk me through the garage door? I'm not sure what I'm seeing. It says wood with obscure glass garage door raised panel. What's glass? It's very confusing. Right. It looks like the wood stiles are really small or something. I don't know what's going on.
We haven't selected material, but that's completely typo. It should be just a modern, most likely aluminum frame glass door.
So it'll all be obscure glass with the thin frame is aluminum, then not wood.
Correct.
Okay,
And
that
we
makes
will,
more sense. I couldn't see
Yeah,
how you
we'll
could do
change
that.
that. Sorry about that.
I couldn't see how you could do that in wood.
No,
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
Commissioner Say?
Oh, yes. Hi, James.
Hi.
Just a question about in the northeast corner of the lot, so towards near where the ADU is, there are series of trees there, and I don't see anything in the report that says what's being proposed about the trees, if they're being removed or they're going to be maintained and built around. Can you shed some light on that?
Site plan. Middle street on the by the sidewalk.
Yeah, so if you're facing the proposed front elevation, it's to the left of the ADU.
Right. Okay, I'm seeing two trees, 8 and 10 inches. Are you referring to those trees or?
I don't know what
I'm
tree.
sorry.
So I see what is it? The site demolition plan. I see there's a removal of one tree.
Oh, right.
But there's a whole cluster of trees there. I don't know. They all, is it a multi-branch singular tree? I mean, it's quite thick in that corner and dense.
It somehow it's not showing on my my plan. But I think our intention is to keep them.
Let's see. Okay, your intention is to keep them. Well, could you take a look at that?
Sure.
Maybe a little bit more closely, because the new proposed construction looks to me like they're right on the trees. That it will be right on the trees, or I don't know how the foundation could be built around the trees, but just to take a look at those, or
Okay, I will.
propose how you're going to address those trees if they need to be removed.
Sure.
And then what's the other question? So you're proposing about an 8-foot projection forward on hillside.
Right.
And did you have any discussions with neighbors uphill from this property, whether there's any potential, I don't know, if there's view blockage or anything? It seems like there could be a little bit of view out down hillside in a way. I'm just wondering if there were any discussions or any issues with neighbors.
There were no discussion, but we definitely could reach out to them prior to next meeting.
Okay.
This project is not actually in the hillside area.
Right.
Ironically, hillside is not in the hillside area construction permit zone.
Yeah, it isn't. I was just wondering if there was any discussion with the neighbors because of the projection and whether it would affect the next door neighbor or a couple of neighbors up the hill. Just from a discussion perspective.
This is Chuck Patterson. Just so you guys know, I'm the owner, and we have had discussions, but unfortunately not up hillside. It's probably the ones we need to have a discussion with.
Thank you. Did you say you will have a discussion?
Yeah, I'll be talking to a couple of them next door.
That will be great. And then lastly, James, is it intentional to have the transition of materials on a flat plane on the hillside side elevation, as well as the right elevation, the interior side elevation?
Correct, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Foth?
Hi, James.
Hi.
I'm kind of struggling too. I had exactly the same question as Commissioner Say about the tree, because I see this one A.2 showing a tree being removed, but I don't see a landscape plan. And when I drove by, it seems like there's a lot of trees there, so it would be great if you could figure that out and hopefully put something back in the space that's remaining. The other thing is, I did want to say, I really appreciate you, both of you, keeping, it looks like a substantial amount of the house, which is really great. And on the, I don't know if we're supposed to, I always forget the order. I'm sorry if I'm doing things out of order. You guys, please be patient, but you're asking for a variance because of the levels and such. But actually, if it were mine, I would be asking for a different reason because I don't know, I feel like you're trying to save what's there. And as far as having a setback because of the grade like that, I mean, Jerry Deal did it on his, which is very close by, the one you all just heard, 1357. And he actually did not ask for a variance on that side. So yeah, he went up a little higher, but you're allowed to do that when the whole property is raised anyway. So I think just those would be enough personally, but I guess I'm out of order, sorry. That's
okay,
it.
thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Pfaff. I don't think that's out of order at all. That was the nature of my question is in regards to the variance. I'm actually having a hard time in terms of the findings. So James, if you could just kind of walk me through the first question, the exceptional or extraordinary circumstance, you say that the existing residence has 3 levels, which do not apply to other properties in the area. I'm having a hard time seeing this as I mean, I see 3 levels just in terms of garage and kind of a split level, but it really presents itself on Hillside as a 1-story house. And I'm not understanding what the hardship is or the extraordinary circumstance.
Well, you know, we do provide 15-foot setback, so it wasn't like we would come in, you know, closer, you know, than the minimum requirements. Yeah, it's back in my mind that I always thought when we do a remodel, you know, it's not subject to average front setback, but apparently that's not the case. And I think I mean, it is kind of far away from the street if you consider, you know, the planting area and also the sidewalk. I mean, that's additional about 10, 15 feet. So basically, you know, the addition is almost about 30 feet from Hillside.
30 feet.
Well, if you look at the site plan on 8-2, you know, our property line is about, excuse me.
You're saying
about 12 feet from the street curve. If you add 15, that's 27 from Hillside.
From the curb, okay. Well, I had almost the opposite experience in visiting the property, in that standing on the sidewalk, the house already kind of looms over the sidewalk. That's mitigated somewhat by the tiered planters. And if I imagine that facade coming out at about an additional 8 feet along that right side, it's going to loom even more over that sidewalk, and it really sets itself apart from the houses further up Hillside. And then just looking down across DeSoto, continuing on down Hillside, it's really going to be an aberration. And so I'm having a hard time seeing what the extraordinary circumstances that warrants a variance. You know, and so that's where I'm struggling.
Could we mitigate by landscaping, so you don't see the addition?
Well, mitigation is one thing, but I just have a hard time making the finding.
No, I get that.
Yes. Question. So anyway, we can see what others have to say, but that's where I'm struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay. Not seeing any further questions for the applicant. Let's go ahead and open it up to the public and see if there are any public comments regarding this project at this time. If you wish to speak, raise your hand now. Seeing no hands, do we have any email communication?
No emails on this one.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and come back to my fellow commissioners. So comments beyond where we've been. Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I had a comment, and I've made this point before in that, houses on corners are particularly difficult because you really have two fronts. And I'm looking at the proposed front elevation on sheet 8.5, and it looks like the side of a house. And I get it that it is because the front door has been moved over to DeSoto, but I think something needs to be done to make it not look like the side of a house. This isn't going to help the argument for the variance for the setback, because you almost need to maybe do a porch or a railing and a door or an arbor or something. But that side look, like I say, it looks like the side of a house, and you're coming down hillside, which is the main street up and down that hill. Doesn't help that I drive it about 5 times a day, but I think something needs to be done on that side to improve the look, to make it a little bit more welcoming. And maybe the landscaping mitigation that Mr. Chu is suggesting might help, but I just think something needs to be done over there.
Okay. Other comments? Commissioner Say?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Commissioner Gall that I'm wanting to see a little bit more development on that hillside side elevation as well. I know that there's some plantings. Looks like there's a tree potentially proposed in front of that the area of addition, but I'm kind of troubled by that flat plane transition of materials. Seems like a really, a simple solution that could be improved upon. And also about I'm also struggling with the variance request, and am more concerned that the area of the proposed addition is on the left, on the corner side of this property versus the internal side, where, if you were approaching the corner, you'd almost have a stepping pattern. Maybe it's recessed back and then it steps out a little bit. From a massing perspective, I almost would rather see it in reverse than it poking out over the corner. I don't know if it's going to affect any the visual perspective for drivers who are turning the corner or anything like that. I know it's up higher, and there's some terracing in front. Maybe a rendering could help of the street, including a couple of neighbors beyond this property to get a better sense of how this proposed massing can affect or does affect the street. But I'm having a little trouble with this as well right now.
Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Say. I also commend the idea of preserving some existing conditions and trying to work with what's there. But I can't get past the variance application to the point of then looking further into the details of the design review. I struggle a little bit as well with the idea of just the materials changing plane, just changing materials in plane, just to try to break down the longer portions of the facade and try to define something that maybe has sort of a contemporary look to it. But I just struggle with the way that the materials are changing now. But before I can even get there, I just can't make the findings for the variance at this point without seeing something either more extraordinary or exceptional relative to this property.
Okay. I can appreciate how difficult it is to do a renovation and to preserve a lot of the architecture that is on this site already. This is a challenging site. I agree. But I too struggle. I'm not seeing the extraordinary part of it for this variance. And really, I would like to see a better corner shot of that to see that, okay, if we're going to have the variance work to be able to help the flow of this project, then I'd really like to see that corner sing rather than be something that we're actually struggling with. So I think we need some more development there. And I agree, the 3D view of that, kind of looking up the street, is going to help us see, because right now it looks very flat and it's not really selling for us. So that would be my concerns for this. Okay, with that, then do we have a motion that we want to make? So we have some challenges, but I think it's doable to bring it back on the action item. And I think we've given some fair amount of critique to help with that. So I'm not sure I'm seeing a reason to stop it from going forward. I think we just need to give it some push. Commissioner Gall, are you ready to give it the push?
I was just going to make a motion to bring it back on regular action. I think we've given the applicant enough direction as far as the questioning the validity of the variance for the setback and some other architectural features on the plan. So I would make a motion to bring this back on regular action.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Loftus, are you the second?
I'm going to second that, and then I wanted to say something when we get into discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Gall and a second by Vice Chair Loftus. Further discussion?
Yeah, so given that I was having some problems as well with the variance request, it feels to me like, I think it's laudable that we're trying to preserve the one-story house on a raised site, but many other houses don't do that. Many other houses, look to go up in an instance like this. This feels like to me that an ADU is, if the ADU goes away, you can do this house without a variance. You can expand backward onto the site. So it feels like we're sort of balancing an additional bedroom and the ADU and the potential for going up. So I guess it comes back on regular action, but it feels like a sort of a major lift. Something big has got to change. This doesn't feel like it changes, not a small thing to gets this past the variance request, it seems to me. So that's my observation for, my take on the guidance that they need to come back on regular action.
And from some of the head nodding, I'm feeling like others in the group are feeling the same way, that it's not going to be a simple change that material. It's going to need some real work on that corner. So good feedback for the applicant. Okay, with that, unless there's further discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, you may, sir.
Sorry, yeah, just along those lines of what you were just stating and where Commissioner Loftus was going. Property owners have a right to develop. They have a right to improve their properties, and they're not asking. They're asking for design review, but in this case, they are asking for a special consideration. And so the question, in my mind, becomes: do they have a right to develop to the level of intensification that requires a variance? And I'm just not seeing the protection of that right to the extent that a variance is approvable in this circumstance with the extraordinary conditions that are presented before us. If there's something we're not seeing and that they can point that out a little bit more clearly, I'd be glad to consider it, but I'm just not seeing that the right to develop to this point, create the ADU, add another bedroom, and push out to the street and ask for a variance. I'm not seeing that connection. Thank you.
Okay, well said. Okay, with that, then let's go ahead and vote. We have a motion to bring it back on regular action.
Commissioner Camerado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus?
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff?
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones?
Aye.
Commissioner Shea?
Aye.
And Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0-0-0. And we'll see it on the next time. Okay, then that moves us on to item number 9C, 1315 Sanchez Avenue. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn your video on at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, the project proposes to construct a new two-story single unit dwelling at 1315 Sanchez Avenue. The project also includes replacing the existing detached garage with a new accessory dwelling unit or ADU. One uncovered parking space will be provided in the driveway at the front left side of the property. As mentioned in the staff report, 2 landscape trees are required by code. The preliminary landscape plan indicates that one 24-inch Japanese maple tree will be planted in the front yard. The existing persimmon tree in the rear yard will remain with construction, but does not qualify as a landscape tree since it is a fruit tree. Prior to the action hearing for this project, the architect will revise the plan to include one additional landscape 24-inch box landscape tree within the property boundaries. As a reminder to the public, review of the ADU application is administrative and is not subject to review by the Planning Commission. Staff has determined that the ADU does comply with the city's ADU regulations. So in summary, the applicant is requesting design review for a new 2-story single unit dwelling. The applicant is in attendance to answer questions, but first I'm available for questions of staff.
Great. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
Hi, good evening. My name is Tim Peterson with Peterson Architecture. Yeah, our project is a 40-foot wide lot, 1315 Sanchez Avenue. It's in a neighborhood of 1- and 2-story residences. I'd say the primary character of those houses in the vicinity of our project are craftsman bungalow style. Our intent is to create a house that blends into the neighborhood and meets the program requirements of my client, their growing family. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, I do have a question. Can you please clarify the fence along the left side driveway? Today, does not seem to be a fence going most of the way back, and I can appreciate the use of the easement there. But I wasn't able to kind of tell from the drawing whether the intent is to put a fence back along the driveway or not.
The intent is to move the fence to the property line. It's in the 10-foot utility easement, which is on the left side of the project. So we're required to move it by Public Works back onto the property line. So what you saw when you made a site visit, it will slide over to the property line.
Okay, then with that, how are you feeling about the parking spot that's quite narrow there in front?
I believe we're required to have one 9-foot by 18-foot parking space, and we have altered the front entry and created an area there for parking, which meets those dimensions. So that's where we are now.
Okay. Commissioner Tronis?
Just a question on materials. but that's another question that's kind of related. Are the ceilings going to be vaulted or will they be trussed? I'm looking at the section. I'm seeing what I think are ceiling joists. So I don't know if the ceilings are vaulted or not.
We have a vaulted ceiling in the master suite or master bedroom.
Okay, nice.
And then everywhere else is a flat ceiling.
Okay, because my question is, in looking at the materials on mainly the front and the rear elevations, it's a little bit of a smorgasbord, if you will, and I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to pick a phrase to help understand my comment, but a little bit of a smorgasbord of materials from the horizontal siding and then the shingles and then the vertical siding and the gables. The reason I asked if there was an attic space is that, if a traditional detail might be some sort of attic vent up in the gable that might allow the shingles to then just continue up into that, because it's not a big house, but it seems like a lot of different materials that are going on there. Did you look at any variations out of that, or are you happy with the way that it's headed in terms of the exterior palette?
My clients had a sort of inspiration photograph of a house that they liked that had similar materials. That had second story shingles, had horizontal siding on the lower level, and then the gable ends changed to vertical, say like 1x6 nickel gap, something like that, or maybe T&G. So yeah, we've gone through different iterations of materials, and I can share that picture with you, but not today. I'd have to.
Okay, that might be helpful. So yeah, because like I said, it's not a big house, and so anything you do is not going to have huge impact. It's a small lot, but it just seemed like it was a little fussy and trying to do a lot. So that's all. So,
okay,
just my opinion. Thanks.
Commissioner Camerata.
Yeah. So could you tell me what the height is on the first floor?
We have 9-foot ceilings.
And second floor?
9-foot ceilings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Foth.
It's just a small, a couple things. You have marked for planting in the front there, a Japanese maple.
Yes.
You have the 2-foot size, but you don't say what kind. And the Japanese maple, there's like 50 kinds. And I wonder if you could just look that's not a 6-foot maple, that it really becomes a 10, 15 foot at least maple tree to help. It really helps property blend in, just so that's specified maybe a little more.
So a 10 to 15 foot.
Well, I'm saying more than, I would, but anyway, whatever you want, but not a dwarf. Or my sister has them, and they can be very tiny. So I would think it would just look better to be in scale, because I believe that's what the design review guidelines say, that things should be in scale, that your landscape should be in scale to the built environment or something like that. That'd be great. The other thing is, it's just, I don't even know if it matters right now, but your rendering shows a certain pattern on the house on page, what is this? I don't even know what page it is. The rendering, the black and white, but then on your line drawings, it's the opposite pattern. So you have a more, I would say more simple windows above and below, but the door is has more panes. So I don't know.
I can clarify the windows. They're going to be 4 light windows, or have a cross shape to them.
All over, like all
the windows, except maybe, I think we have a double. Excuse me, I'm looking at my drawings here. The rendering should have crosses in the windows, and the ADU should have crosses in the window. We do have a double hung window at the kitchen sink, which has a more prayer style, maybe division of glass. But that's the style we're headed toward.
Well, then I do have just one thing to add, and that would be with it's sort of, I don't know if Commissioner Camerata was heading that way, but then if you choose that type of window, I think they look large, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't look maybe a little better to come down on the second floor, maybe, I don't know, 6 inches or something, because it kind of is looking like a little overbearing, or maybe just smaller, a little smaller windows. I don't know. Just something I noticed. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. Not seeing any further questions for the applicant. That being said, then let's go ahead and look out into the audience and see if there's anybody who wishes to speak on this item. If you do, please raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any electronic communication?
Nope, no electronic communication.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to commissioners for comments. Commissioner Camerado.
Yeah, so my thought is that it just feels a little top heavy, not too much. And I think it's the, as Jennifer, as Commissioner Pfaff was saying, was that maybe it's just the windows need to come down or something just seems a little top heavy to me. I think it's a small site, and I think maybe that's also, it's going to be a big house. It's going to look big on that small lot. So just trying to get some proportions, but I look to my fellow commissioners to see what they think.
Okay. Any others? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, the elevation, the front elevation especially, not so much the rendering, but the front elevation looks tall to me as well. That's why I was wondering, with 9-foot plates on both the first and second floor, maybe if the upper floor was brought down to 8.5 feet, or maybe even 8 foot with a peaked or coffered ceiling upstairs, I think you'd still get the same effect inside, but it would help to bring the scale of that house down a little bit, which I think is important in this site.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners, and I think was a good catch by Commissioner Pfaff. The difference between the rendering versus the elevations, the 6 light windows on the renderings give a little bit better scale, but if it's going to actually be the 4 light windows like shown on the elevations, they're looking tall, and they can be tall with the 9-foot ceiling. But if those windows were smaller, perhaps, and or the plate height came down, I think that would help with the scale. So, thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Loftus.
Yeah, I think the scale problem is the frankly the plate height on the second floor. The giveaway for me is the left side elevation, where you've got essentially two equal stacks. The other sides have a more substantial roof midway, which breaks down the scale. But the giveaway on the left side is that it's 2 pancakes of equal thickness. And I really think you got to look at bringing it down.
Okay, so we've given some good feedback, I think, and direction. We ready for a motion? Commissioner Tronis?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to bring this back on regular action when the plans have been revised as requested.
Second that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Tronis and a second by Commissioner Camerado. Any further discussion? None. Let's vote.
Commissioner Camerado?
Aye.
Commissioner Gall?
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus?
Aye.
Commissioner Pfaff?
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis?
Aye.
Commissioner Say?
Aye.
And Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0-0-0. And that is that. So now moving on to our last design review study item, 1669, 1699 Bayshore Highway and 810, 821 Malcolm Road. If you're the applicant or the applicant's representative, please raise your hand so that we may be prepared for you to speak at the appropriate time. If possible, we ask that you turn on your video at that time. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we hear a staff report, please?
Yes, I will attempt to keep this brief because the applicant is here with their own presentation. The project site is bounded by Stanton Road to the south and Bayshore Highway to the east. Malcolm Road traverses the center of the proposed campus, running east to west from Bayshore Highway. The project site currently has a total of 4 existing buildings that are vacant, and the site is fenced. And the project shows a parcelization, which would create 2 parcels for the new campus, a north parcel and a south parcel. The north campus of the proposed project consists of 1 new 7-story office research and development building with public amenity spaces on the first floor and surface level parking at the rear of the building. The south campus of the proposed project consists of a new 8-story office research and development building with public amenity spaces on the first floor. The south parcel will also have a 7-story parking garage. The 2 office buildings will each have a plaza facing Malcolm Road, and the garage structure on the south parcel would have 7 levels of covered parking, with the 8th level being open to the sky. There are 875 total parking spaces proposed, where 710 total spaces are required. So there are more parking spaces proposed than are required, but the applicant is requesting a parking variance for off-site parking. They would like to locate 237 of the required parking spaces for the north parcel off-site in the parking garage on the south parcel. A special permit is required for structures exceeding 65 feet in height in the II zone, and the applicant is requesting a special permit for building height for all 3 buildings. The north parcel will be 128 feet tall. The building on the south parcel will be 143 feet tall, and the 7-story parking structure is proposed to be 97 feet tall. The applicant is also proposing a total campus floor area of 2.1 FAR. A special permit is also required for FAR of up to 2.75 for office and research developments for properties in the II zoning district that also have frontage on Bayshore Highway. If they have an inclusion of 2 tier 3 community benefits in the project. This applicant is offering the following 3 community benefits: public plaza, off-site streetscape improvements. There are 2 options, which include a crosswalk and a possible signal. And the 3rd community benefit is flexible benefit, and the applicant is proposing publicly accessible community benefits or community amenities inside both of the new buildings on the first floor, which include things like workspace lobbies, cafes and restaurants, and a conference room that would be available to community members. For the Commission's convenience, the design principles for innovation in industrial district are listed in the staff report, along with required findings for both special permits and variances. I also need to note 3 corrections to the staff report. On page 1, the size of the north parcel should be listed as 1.6 acres. On page 2, the second bullet point should list the north campus as 2.71 FAR and the south campus as 2.23 FAR. And finally, since the preparation of the staff report, the applicant has clarified that the proposed gym and locker rooms shown in the community benefits package on the first floor of the north building are not intended to be accessible to the public, as it states in the staff report. That concludes what I have to say, and I'll leave the rest to the applicant.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have any questions for staff at this point before we get started with the applicant? Commissioner Tronis. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry, that last one was a bit of a bombshell, Erica. So in regards to the community benefits, they're saying that the workout area, what was the other one, are not open to the public?
So the community benefits package list has a whole list of items on the first floor of both buildings that are intended to be amenities. The conference room, there are several workspace lobbies, a cafe, a restaurant. The applicant can expand more on this, but they had several reasons, mainly involving security, as to why the actual locker rooms would not be available to the public.
Oh, the locker rooms. Okay.
Just the locker rooms, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. And has staff had a chance to consider that and still deeming the package of community benefits still meet our requirements, or is that still something being assessed?
It's not something that's specified as such in the zoning code right now. It's something that should be considered by the commission. They still are offering several other very large spaces on both first floors that are counting as that community benefit.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Will the applicant or the applicant's representative please come forward, state your name and anything else you'd like to say about your project?
Thank you and good evening, commissioners and Vice Chair Loftus, Chair Schmidt. We've had a very positive process with staff as we developed our project to this level of detail. We hope that you guys found it to be thorough. We've tried to hire some of the best designers that we can build partnerships with. The applicant is myself. I represent Helios Real Estate Partners. We're actually co-developing this project with King Street Properties out of Boston in the East Coast. And together we're coming together to form a joint venture and bringing together some of the better minds in the design space to help put in place the general plan for this neighborhood. So when we looked at this project originally, we tried to find ways to create a campus where one doesn't exist. And so when we think about that, holistically, we are trying to build an area that could be insular and protected, but also connect directly to the waterfront. It's a wonderful amenity within the city of Burlingame. I use it myself with my family. And as this neighborhood gets built out over time, we wanted to be proud of what we're delivering and have people share in it. And so when we looked at our site, we tried to build a campus, which is why we have parking off site. We consolidated the parking into a garage, and I'll let our designers speak to it a little bit further. The plaza connects the campus together, and we have Renee from SWA, who's done some fantastic work in the San Francisco Bay Area and elsewhere. And we've also worked with Perkins and Will from a timeless architecture standpoint. They can speak to that piece as well. And we have brought on Elliot Marsh from Marsh & White, who's an international designer, to help us with our amenities. A bit of feedback on the fitness center. We have to size the fitness center an appropriate amount. Otherwise, it's very hard to maintain it. In addition, security is a risk for having a fitness center with locker rooms. We would have to badge that and keep it safe for the tenants. The rest of the ground floor amenities are meant to be publicly accessible and really drive home that sense of place. So this can be an area where the neighborhood can congregate and enjoy and really try to bring something back that maybe was there once upon a time with Gulliver's and some of the other establishments around there. So we're trying to take a notes from the past and really reinvigorate this and bring a diverse set of businesses back to the Bayfront. And with that, life science companies are at the forefront of what we have at the Bay Area as a nice job employment base. So we feel that this is a great campus that could attract those tenants here and really reinforce Burlingame as a life science node. So with that, I think I'm able to share my screen, and I'll let our team do a very brief presentation, and then we'll open up for feedback.
Great, thank you.
Doesn't look like I'm able to share, unfortunately, Erica. There we go. Thank you, sir. This is our cover page. You would move forward, please. Continue, please. As you may know, this is the Bayfront, so it's something that I'm sure we're all very familiar with, but we wanted to just point out that the Bayfront has a large amount of hotels and existing businesses, and what we thought we could reinforce is bringing life science companies, and to do so, we wanted to take the brightest minds in the life science design space and bring them here to form, the best team we could. Can we move forward, please? The existing site is across the street from the Marriott Hotel. It also is across the street from the public shore access point of the Bay Trail. And so when in the void of having a lot of obvious sense of place, we wanted to create a very deliberate connection to that Bay Trail because it's so nicely used. And those amenities, the food and beverage and other workplace amenities, hopefully can be a place where people not only from our campus could enjoy, but people from the Bay Trail and other neighborhoods could come too. Next slide, please. And so I'll pass this on to Peter Fowl of Fowl Long Perkins Will to speak to the architecture.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So just to kind of get you oriented to the project here, you can see the 3 buildings, the 2 buildings along Old Bayshore Highway, and then the garage building behind. And they're really all about creating a concert between these 3 buildings to create an amazing place on Malcolm. And we're cognizant of kind of future plans for Bayshore. And it was clear that the best place to create a place for people to gather and for activity to occur would be on Malcolm off of Bayshore. So these buildings really work together. You'll see as we proceed in the presentation, it's all about placemaking on Malcolm. The building forms, actually I'm going to hand it over to Renee to talk about the landscape, which is very much in support of what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Peter. As the staff report points out, there are really 3 primary components to the approach to the landscape here. This environment is huge scaled, very large waterfront, the 101 to the south, the streets were, designed for more of an industrial scale. So a lot of our approach to the landscape is to scale down the spaces, place make 3-dimensionally with the topography and use the building edges to create very memorable spaces. But at the same time, respect the streetscape and the larger regional framework that we're working in within the city. So there's a main plaza on Malcolm, which is the place-making move. We want to create a place where people, the community, as well as project users or people walking the Bay Trail might want to come, stop, linger, have a cup of coffee outside. And a lot of it is about creating edges, but also creating moments and controlling frames and kind of embracing the architecture that's coming. The second component is creating a more robust streetscape. Let's say goodbye to the resource-intensive strip lawns and come back with a more native plant palette. The project adds over 100 trees to the existing site, and it's trying to respect Bayshore as one type of streetscape, which will have bike access and safe pedestrian crossing, but still allow traffic to flow, versus Malcolm and Stanton, which are more streets that are kind of expressing the urban grid coming to the waterfront itself. And then the third component is the ecological component. Behind the garage and adjacent to the garage on two edges, there's a very large stormwater remediation program, which is a part of the approach to the landscape. Give something back. Thank you.
So next slide. Here's a view looking from Bayshore into Malcolm, and you can get a sense of how we've developed the facades of the building above to reduce the mass by breaking it down into several different building forms and change the vertical articulation to create variation over the length of the building so that it's not kind of the same thing all the way down the experience of the street. And you can see at the ground level, there's a different articulation that's really about creating a very human-centric experience at the street level, about making connections indoor and outdoor. And what you can see from the plans is the ground level expression kind of pinches at Bayshore, and as a result of that forms more of a place on Malcolm, while the building above actually gestures the other way, which is really about the view from the working spaces above. And so the combination of those creates the architecture articulation. And the articulation of the skin of the building is about reducing the perceived mass as well and making it more human scale. So next slide. And here you can see inside the plaza area where the two flanking plazas from both buildings address each other over the sort of activated plaza space. A raised sidewalk condition tends to connect those two plazas and make them feel like one. One thing to note is that the building is taking sea level rise and resilience into consideration. So we've made the main level of the building up at 11 feet, and that is the long-term federal floodplain. But the lobbies themselves are actually down at ground level to make a more generous flow from these outdoor spaces into the lobby. And the changes of level create a kind of interesting condition, both on the inside and the outside, that link the experience of those spaces in the building itself. And then on the left, you can see the garage structure that has a glassy expression on its stair, encouraging you to use the stair as you move up and down, and then a transparent skin that dresses the garage itself so that you're not looking at a raw garage. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elliot Marsh. We've talked a lot about linking the indoor uses and the outdoor uses to activate the space, and Elliot's going to talk about that.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? That's great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elliot March, co-founder of March & White Design. We're an international design firm with a focus on high-end sort of hospitality, residential and commercial projects. And the big draw to the scheme here for us was the amount of kind of programming we could do on the amenities, as well as the community aspect to the project as well that we could engage with from an interior design perspective. You can see we've got a full amenities program to both buildings, but particularly on the right-hand side of the plan there, we've got a really good opportunity to introduce this cafe bistro / grab and go type offering that can really engage with the community. And having kind of toured the site, the connection to the Bayshore Trail as well, and drawing the community and people back into the plaza and the project from that corner spoke really strongly to us. And we think there's a great kind of dialogue to be had between interiors and landscaping and the plaza, and really creating an indoor-outdoor space that people can enjoy, not just in the week, but at the weekend as well. So that was a really kind of strong piece that I think we've got to design on the project. And then really linking that to this all hands kind of community space as well. So in the day, or at certain times, it could be used by the actual building, and then it can flip as well to the community at the same time. A space that can really house a large number of people for an event, a community event, and also break down as well into different size rooms that can be smaller gathering events for the community as well, which we thought was really important. And also really not tucked away, but public facing, right on the front, right on the glazing, spaces that are really in direct connection with the streetscape. And you can see some of these images here that we're starting to put together, alluding to the facade really opening up and engaging, folding up, really making use of that sort of, the weather we've got, the indoor-outdoor nature of the space, the grab and go element, and really on the interiors, creating a design that's warm, that's welcoming, that brings the landscape into the building as well, and that's not alien, but really engages with the community. Thank
you. Next slide, please. And so what we tried to do was work with staff to develop community benefits that captured the best parts of our project and made them also part of the community's access. And we did that through the three that we were proposing, which we've spoken about. Next slide. And so when we look at them in context on the site plan, it is the entire site. It's not like we're trying to tuck these away into the other regions. It's really in the front, and it's meant to really create that nice sense of place that is connected to the Bay Trail and reinforces itself so that it's something that's timeless and people can enjoy, beyond just, this generation. Next slide. And so as we spoke to various aspects, we do think that the plaza can be programmed. And I know that SWA and Renee has experience doing these on very large scales. And so while we probably will never be able to repeat downtown Burlingame's farmers market, perhaps there's an offshoot of it, and trying to find ways to activate the bayfront on the weekends when it's not as popular as a workplace destination. Next slide. And as Elliot pointed out, we really are trying to develop a Class A asset here that everybody can enjoy. So we're very focused on finding what is not current today, but what's going to be current well into the future, and be able to be flexible around it. So make sure we have sea level rise accounted for, create spaces that are high ends, and make that all available to the public. Granted, we'll have to have limitations around the fitness center. And final slide. And one of the main considerations that we wanted to pose to the commission is we've studied very high level some traffic impacts. And as we develop our project further, we're going to continue to work with staff on the full impact assessment. Early indicators show us that the signal at Stanton Road, which is a key piece of our parking garage, is a robust signalized intersection. However, we still want to have that direct pedestrian safety corridor to the Bay Trail, and that would require a protected pedestrian crosswalk. We've thought about a couple ways to do that. One would be a mid-block crossing, which aligns more directly with the trailhead. Another way to accommodate that is to move it closer to the intersection itself, which is outside of the Marriott loading dock. But it does, kind of tee up fairly nicely to the intersection itself. And those would accommodate pedestrians nicely. But if we try to think timelessly, we also wonder, is a signal warranted? Because this is going to be something that's a nice project on a nice thoroughfare, and there's going to be more people coming beyond just our project. And we didn't want to ignore that because there's a longer vision here. And so we wanted to show two options and put it to the commission of, how the commission feels about either option, so we can study them more thoroughly with staff. And that's our presentation. We really thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Great presentation. Do we have any questions for the applicants at this time? Commissioner Torres?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, thank you for the presentation. That's really helpful. So first, my questions, I want to drill down, if we could, a little bit on the community benefits. So looking at the flexible benefits in particular, these coffee grab and go, the cafe grab and go seems relatively straightforward, but am I correct in presuming that, somebody that's working at the HVAC company that's down the street on, I think it's on Malcolm, they can stop in there and grab a coffee, right? They can, in other words, it's not exclusive to the building tenants or anything like that. They can go into that lobby, grab a coffee and head on their way.
Absolutely, or stay.
Okay, or stay, yeah. And then similarly with the lounges, if, somebody needs a workspace or something of that sort, they're welcome to hang out in those lobby spaces. Correct? I mean,
that's correct, yes.
Okay. So then on the fitness center, let's talk about that one. I get what you're saying now in terms of needing some security in regards to the locker room, but would the fitness center be something that's available to visitors to just come in either on a subscription basis or something and use that? Or is that more strictly for the building tenants?
We're envisioning it as a amenity for the tenants and not necessarily open to the public, only because, well, not only, a series of issues. One is security. The second one is maintenance. It will get heavily more used, and then availability for the tenants who are thus using the building upstairs. And so when exploring that as an amenity, it would replace someone else's gym membership. And gym membership is particularly a larger amenitized fitness center like this would be quite much larger and have more ability for machines and use. And so we view it as, if you open it up, it's very hard to regulate. How would you actually operate the fitness center? And it becomes a much larger endeavor than we're prepared to do.
Okay. So, all right. So I guess we got to kind of cross that off the list then as sort of a community benefit, but although we can see it somewhat as a benefit to the people that are at least working and living, so to speak, in the project, right?
Yes, and we're really trying to take an eye of wellness into it, and that was part of it.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. My other question then is on then the community room. How do you foresee that operating or being used? Is that something that, other property owners in the area, if they need a conference space, let's say, can they reserve that? Can they rent it, or how would that operate?
That's correct. And actually, our business partner, King Street Properties, has case studies on this in the greater Boston area, which is where we got the initial idea. This neighborhood has a lot of hotels with conference facilities. Those tend to be harder to reserve if you're a smaller business.
Sure.
And so what we were trying to envision is a conference facility that was more welcoming and more obvious how to reserve. So if you're already in the space and you notice there's a conference facility, you can simply go rent it or reserve it in the future. And I guess the case study I would point to is one that I'm experienced with in the past. Is we had a facility when I was part of a neighborhood association that was in a commercial space. And it was free to the neighborhood association. So when they had their monthly meetings, that was where we congregated. And so that's how we envision this functioning. It's something that we would take on as the management, and people could reserve it for a period of time.
Okay. Well, what I would ask in that regard is, if you can work with SWA on maybe some development of that, the adjacent areas to that, because I could see then that community room working even better. I mean, where it's kind of shown. I'm just looking diagrammatically at the exhibit that that you presented to us on page 10. I know it's just sort of a bubble diagram, but it's kind of tucked back into the corner of this space now. If it had some adjunct outdoor space, I think it could benefit by some of that. Maybe there's some reconsideration of how that interacts with what you're calling the lounge. If those spaces could work together. I guess what I'm asking is that if when this comes back for action, if we can see a little bit more detailed development on that, and some blow up plans or focus on how those spaces are going to operate with each other, I think it would be really helpful, because I'd really like to see these community spaces work, even though the community, the proximate community is still developing out there in that area, and they'll need to get to know this space and know this project. But if they really had some good identity in terms of the detailing, I think that would be really helpful. So if we could see some more development on that, I think that would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And my last question then, in terms of the programming, I had other questions that we can, well, maybe I'll just continue on, but some of them have to do with the environmental analysis. But on the tenant spaces that you have on the ground floor, what sort of tenants do you envision seeing in those spaces, the ones that you have identified in blue that are along Old Bayshore Highway?
Actually, in life science and technology, the ground floor spaces are some of the more sought after for floor loading reasons, as well as just normal fire code suppressions and storage of facilities. Okay. And so those tenants would likely be in that range of life science and technology tenants, not necessarily retail.
Okay, no, that's fine. But I guess what I'm hoping is that, the character along the street, there will be life sort of that we see inside those spaces, as is called for in the design guidelines. And looking at the architecture, that it supports that in terms of what we're seeing along the street. So it'd be nice if those areas were, if not lively, at least just had some tenant life, and they're not utility spaces and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's like our front door to Bayshore.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then another question in terms of the entitlements. I thought I read somewhere in the staff report that there are various easements on the property. Are there some easements, or is that?
There's an existing public utility easement that's on the south parcel. That is a unutilized PG&E overhead line easement that runs in between 821 Malcolm and Gulliver's.
Okay.
So we were proposing to vacate that easement. It's not necessary.
Okay, so then that goes away and doesn't become a hindrance on the project.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Then can someone walk me through the bird safe glazing that's proposed? Am I correct in reading that was something that is intended?
Yes, and we have fritting in that. I'll pass it to Peter to speak a little more elegantly than I.
Yeah, I mean, in almost all the commercial projects we're doing these days, we're doing bird safe glass.
Sure.
And so, we're pretty sensitive to that. And if you guys have any specific requirements, we'd love to hear more about those. But right now we're working with a kind of developing a frit that will make sure birds are aware of the glass in flight.
Okay, great. The specific requirements that I have is that I have 2 city council members that have specifically asked me to make sure I ask that kind of question for projects like this that come before us. So.
Okay, well, maybe when we come back, we can share with you, that more in detail.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. I think that was it for my questions. I'll just comment on the environmental scoping when we get to that point. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Loftus.
Thank you. I want to ask a series of questions about the amenities and the public gestures being made at the ground floor. I really appreciate that that you're making this grand public gesture at the ground floor and that you're trying to activate that. I'm looking at sheet A1002, which is the green and blue ground floor that shows tenant and amenity. So what I'm hearing is that what is that? The north parcel's the smaller of the two buildings, or the smaller of the two floor plates. That green area that says amenity should really say tenant and be blue, right? Because that's not open to the public. That's not really a public amenity. Is that right? That's because it shows up in the 8.5 by 11 package of public amenities as the fitness center, quiet yoga locker rooms, and that's not public.
I think as we develop the ground floor plan further, we'll be able to be more specific about the demarcation of it. When we were preparing for tonight's call meeting, we had not advanced that package to its fullest extent. We wanted to receive your feedback before we did so. So we're willing to come back to this commission with a more detailed analysis of what it is.
So at least part of that's blue and part of it's green, part of it's private and part of it's tenant space and part of it's amenity space.
That's correct.
And then the blue area on the opposite building, the south building, that should be green because that really is amenity, right? According to the diagram, depends how it gets developed, but it looks like it's mostly amenity, open to the public.
That's correct. It's essentially the best way to characterize it is we're trying to make a ground floor experience that is open to the public, save the fitness center.
Okay. And so tell me about the lobby / open workspace. Who's the open workspace for?
This is for your entrepreneur that has a laptop and seeks something other than Starbucks, where they may not need a conference room, but they need somewhere that's more head down space. And
so someone off the street or in the building? Could be either. So you don't foresee any security issues, people coming in and using the lobby from outside, because that sort of doesn't happen in the city. But my experience in the city is that security is pretty tight and you get chased out of lobbies if you sort of go in and try to hang out. So, but you're really going to open it to the public?
Yes, and I guess the best example of this was at Uptown Station in Oakland, which is very much an urban environment, as a project I led. That was also a fully open interior space to the public. We had security desks there, which was meant to make sure that people who were abusing the space were not there. But if you were enjoying the space or just passing through, then you're more than welcome.
So is this more like, is it intended to be more like, I don't know what the address is anymore, I can't remember anything anymore, but the KPMG building in downtown San Francisco, the big public open space at KPMG is a 2-story open space. Is it like that one?
It could be. I don't remember that building specifically. Another one, a case study, is 350 Bush Street, which is the old mining exchange, mercantile exchange. That's another one where it was just a large space, but not as programmed, but open to the public.
Okay, that's good, because I wanted to make sure I understood that, because it gets at a question that I'm going to ask. One observation that I wanted to make, it looks like to me, the heart of the public space is the plaza, really. There are two they're wide passageways, but they're really passageways back from Bayshore to the heart of the public space. And the public space really engages, the plaza is engaged with the lobbies. And then along the way, you get these smaller amenities that are engaging with the pathway as opposed to the lobby itself. And did you look at minimizing, maybe I know the answer now that I know what the lobbies are like. Did you look at minimizing the building lobbies and maximizing the engagement of the actual public amenities with the larger public space? It almost feels inverted. It almost feels like, and I know the downside to this too, it feels like the public space ought to be where the real public amenities are, and the lobbies become secondary to those real public amenities and secondary to the space, minimizing the lobbies, the building lobbies themselves, which are business oriented spaces by and large, and maximizing the spaces associated with the public. And so did you look at any option like that, which sort of flips it on its head?
We did. I guess the best way to describe it is that the process we went through was we started with the existing conditions of the land, and the topography change is driving a lot of the functionality of the site. And so when we explored initially how to create functional lobbies and functional amenity spaces, the amenity spaces wanted to live at an elevation that was above sea level rise in the event that there's a 100-year storm or something of that nature. And then if we were to shift the sea level rise elevation closer to the lobby, it actually created a very dramatic and steep fall off, which felt uninviting for either side. And so we brought SWA with their experience in dealing with Chase Center in the city, stepping up to a programmed level was a way that we were trying to think about it. And you enter in for ADA accessibility. The other piece of it is we had to do that at the garage. And so as a wheelchair would come out of the garage, they could go into the lobby without any weird switchback ramps or things of that nature. And then once within inside the lobby, we have the ability to go up to the ADA level, or excuse me, the amenity level without having to go through a whole laborious path of travel.
Man, that sounds complicated. It has this bizarre, there's this something bizarre about what I'm seeing, and that is that the highly public amenity spaces, other than the open workspaces in the lobby, look to me to be sort of hidden by landscape from Bayshore and secondary to the heart of what's really going on. And I don't have a solution for that. It's not my job to have a solution for it, but I wanted to understand why it seems backwards to me.
Yeah, if I could comment on that, I think in our development of the scheme, we originally had public spaces on Bayshore. And as we interacted with staff, it became very clear that Bayshore is a lot more fast moving, and it is in its future development is not really going to change that much. So there was a strong sense that it would be better to create place for people to gather that's not on Bayshore, but actually on Malcolm off of Bayshore. So we're actually trying to create a separation between the sort of faster moving, more vehicular intensive environment of Bayshore and the quieter, slower speed, more sheltered area that we're creating on Malcolm.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. It feels like that you didn't quite get there. It feels like you left some stuff behind up front, up near Bayshore, and it's wanted to get dragged down to the plaza at Malcolm, but instead you've got two big building lobbies. So that's, I think, what's bothering me. I think that what you just said makes a lot of sense. These spaces don't really want to be on Bayshore. They want to be where the action wants to be, which is the heart of the plaza. It reminds me of, it wants to be more like 303 2nd Street. The renovation that was done at 303 2nd Street in the city where the big plaza is ringed by retail and, a lot of different small retail by and large. And then the building lobbies feel secondary to that. Okay, well, that explains the challenges you're facing. I just wanted to understand why the decisions were made the way they were made. Thanks.
I think if I could address that from the landscape perspective, I think Chase Center is a pretty good precedent. The main plaza is 8 feet above 3rd Street. And there's a whole sequence getting from 3rd Street to the plaza. You can take terrace gardens up to the plaza. You can walk a sloped walkway up to the garden, but it's not landscaping in terms of trees and shrubs that are, screening anything. It's an immersive landscape that you actually walk through and engage to get to the public realm. And that's what we're after. Some people might want to linger on Malcolm Street, on the seat walls or the movable furniture or the benches, find the sunshine or the shelter from the wind. Others may want to go all the way into the lobby. So it's not by any means intended to be a barrier or a screen. It's meant to be an immersion and an experience in itself. That's what we're after.
Yeah, I was at Chase Center last night, in fact, and it's hard to tell what's going on with that many people outside in that space after a game. So thanks.
Sure.
I would just add, we wanted to make sure we wanted to sort of activate the corner of the building. So that's the reason why the kind of cafe, bistro, get, grab and go was there. So we want to kind of draw people in from the Bay Trail. So, the building's here, you can eat here, you can grab a coffee here. We need something that sort of shouts like that to bring people into the space as well. So that was a big driver.
Well, maybe the fitness center and the coffee bar get flipped in the final version then. Not like the diagram.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Fox?
Yes, I had a similar comment to Commissioner Loftus about, I'm seeing it in my head, I'm seeing it as reversed. But I want to just start with the definition of what you are referring to as the plaza. Are you saying that you are you taking the curbs away from this Malcolm, the public street? Is it going to be straight across? You'll pave it and it will feel like part of your plaza, but it's a public street? Or are there real sidewalks with curbs as there are now? I'm not really understanding what you're talking about.
It's a plush curb condition. So the plaza extends across Malcolm, building to building.
But do you step down? That's what I guess, right now there's a sidewalk, there's a curb, you step down, there's a street, and then you step up. And what are you saying? It is just all going to be one piece? Like
Yes.
the same level? Okay.
It's a flush tabletop.
Okay. So, all right, even though there will still be cars going through there and such, you just have to be careful. Because my comment was really, I measured it and it's not, I know that this is not the same as the Facebook site, or they're called something else now, but Meta, is that the right word? The one that's way out there, and it is a different zone as far as the planning goes, but it has the same height regulations. So they did have to, get their variances and such. But these are really, really tall buildings. They're the ones that out at Facebook are not quite as tall, at least not all of them. And these are denser together. So I'm just picturing what I'm concerned about is you're calling it a plaza, but the actual space between the buildings is not that big. And I wonder if there's been a shadow study, because I can't, with that kind of height, I'm having trouble seeing a nice sunny area in which to sit. That's the first issue. It's not that generous of a space that I can see at this point. And I think that's my biggest stumbling block as far as considering this a public amenity. It's the shape, because I'm not able to see an inviting space there. What I'm seeing in my head, which may be wrong, is a windy, dark shaded area that's kind of narrow, because you pinched in the area at Bayshore, and it is really windy there. Maybe you've been out enough to see that it can be kind of miserable out there, but I'm just not seeing a very inviting space. And then the amenities great, but I think it really will be mainly for your office. So I'm just having trouble with what I'm imagining is a shady, cooler area, which is not open and inviting like actually, I did forget to say that the Meta site from building to building, and it is several hundred feet long. And it's running in the other direction, by the way. It's running perpendicular to what you have here. Their open space is not Malcolm, it's the other way. And I believe it's 109 feet wide, and it goes for several hundred feet. So it is really, although those are tall buildings, it's really very open and sunny. And that's my only comment. I'll leave the architectural stuff to those who are gifted at that on our commission, but I'm having a little problem with the plaza. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot of my questions have been asked already, but do you know how tall your buildings will be compared to the Marriott across the street, just to get a sense of scale? I counted 11 floors, I think, on the Marriott today, but
We're actually a little shorter than the Marriott.
okay.
About 20 feet, I believe.
20 feet less. Okay. So I like where you were going with the street crossing and the access to the Bay Trail, but is it possible, do you think, to add some additional signage to the Bay Trail? Because you almost don't see it. It has a little monument down there that's only about an 18-inch block, but if you could get something on your side of the street, and then I think you're right. I think you're going to need a light, because the traffic does get pretty quick there. But have you thought about any signage for that?
We have. It's I guess it depends where we drop the trailhead to be. It makes it a little more of a challenge. Part of, if it goes directly to the Bay Trail, then that's BCDC jurisdiction, and that's a one ownership group. If it's to the Marriott, then it's the Marriott and BCDC, and so we would work with staff to develop that further.
Because if you went straight across at the corner, you kind of just land at the loading dock, and that's not ideal, I think. But I'll let you guys work on that. Couple other questions. Have you thought about any artwork or sculpture at the plaza?
Not yet, but it's not something that we're open to. So.
Okay, yeah, because I think that would be helpful there to even just to draw people in. And then just to go back on the question, I think Commissioner Konos asked, but the amenities would all be open to the public. Is that correct?
All but the fitness center.
All but the fitness center. Okay, great. Let's see, what else do they have? How about on the parking? You have these community rooms that people can use, but let's say somebody from the other side of town needed to reserve a space, where would they park, or how the parking be controlled in the parking garage, I guess?
It's a good question. We thought about that. There's two types of parking that's available on site. There's surface parking at the north building, which we envision as being more for visitors who are not familiar with the garage. Sometimes coming to a project that has a garage feels a little stately.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have surface parking because that's more obvious and inviting. And so we envisioned those, I believe it's 30 some odd stalls being for visitors primarily. And then you would have additional parking inside the garage. And the parking ratio, just not to go too far down the rabbit hole, is greater than what the zoning requires.
Right.
But is in the strike zone of what the marketplace requires for life science users. And so we tried to not overbuild, but because no one wants to see a garage that doesn't get utilized. I think as this neighborhood gets built out and we go into the future, maybe garages transform over time, but in today's environment, the parking ratio of 2 per 1,000 is pretty typical.
Yeah, so then that surface parking would somehow need to be controlled as well, so it's just not used by the public to park there, right?
We would stripe it, paint it out to be obvious. I don't think we would suggest doing something as punitive as meters or something.
Yeah, I was just asking because when I was down there today, a number of people just pulled in. Obviously, there's no businesses there and everything's fenced, but a number of people just parked right on the curb there and walked actually up Malcolm for whatever business they had to do. So I'm just curious if the public's going to start using that lot. But getting back to that north that north building and that north lot on your civil site plan. It has across the lot and then kind of back over to the Hampton Inn. It has a 5-foot public SD easement. Is that something that's still, or what is that for?
Right now, the PG&E gas line that served the former Flying Foods building ran down that back a lot condition. And that's the most obvious place for a new PG&E easement to run because it's the connection to the street.
Right, but it's not a public, that would be a private easement then, wouldn't it? Or is that a public easement?
It'd be a public utility easement.
Oh, okay. All right. So that, yeah, I was just wondering what that was going over there for. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Say.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a number of my questions have been answered as well, and I have some more. So you answered the height of the Marriott, the 11-story building. A little bit down the road is 1350 Bayshore. That's the one bay plaza. Is that a similar height to your structure? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head what that final height is, but the FAA height limitation in this neighborhood is 162 feet. And so many of the buildings along the waterfront were built to that maximum height. I can get back with staff on the height of one bay plaza.
Okay, thank you. Somewhere I read amongst all the material you've prepared for us is that trucks leaving the north building come out of that northeast corner driveway. Is that correct?
It's a potential opportunity for them to egress. We have studied that in turning radiuses because we needed the fire lane to be able to go around the building. And so we studied the radii of the trucks to leave and enter onto Malcolm at that location, but they would have to go southbound.
Right. So that was one of my questions is, so it'd be forced to go southbound. You're not introducing a new intersection that would allow them to go northbound from that driveway. So then my concern would be that trucks won't want to go this way and will travel through the parking lot behind or west of the north building and then come out on Malcolm and potentially introduce.
That's a potential. However, we also made a back-end loading dock so that trucks had the flexibility to go either way. And one of the beauties of this neighborhood is that it has so many access points to the freeway. So trucks can easily get to 101 from Broadway intersection as well as the Millbrae intersection. It's not the same distance, but it's not that far.
My concern was more about trucks traveling along Malcolm through the public plaza and choosing that as a route if they are coming or departing from the north building. Is the square footage of the plaza inclusive of the big gray flat area that's the roadbed essentially between the two?
No. The southern building is about 8,000 feet and the north building is 5,000 feet. And then in between the two is the tabletop.
Okay, so they're separate. So it's certainly not really usable as a plaza there with cars driving back and forth. Another question is with your location of your ADA ramp outside of the south building, which looks like it's a straightaway leading to the corner. I can't help but imagine skateboarders traveling along that ramp and shooting off that ramp and potentially ending up on the road accidentally. So just some thought there in terms of either redirecting that ramp somehow, maybe starting it from another, make it force a turn or something so that we don't have any potential accidents going down that ramp. Or if we were to have some snowy days, people treating it like a sled path. And so likewise, in some other areas, I think you had some concrete steps for seating. I think you've shown it to be kind of seating areas. And another concern there would be skateboarders taking over those areas. And let's see, back to the community room. When you work on that more and develop its arrangement and its use, it'd be nice to consider that there may be either breakout rooms and just other ways to use a space other than a large, one large space. And then somehow to consider as you're developing it for rental or use, that nonprofits have the ability to use this space. I volunteer for a couple of nonprofits, and it's hard to have meeting spaces around that end up costing money. And so that would be a really nice community benefit to have some spaces available for nonprofit type organizations to use.
That's,
you have any control over that?
We will, and we would obviously, absolutely support those users. That's kind of the intent of having it be available, more so than a company that has their own conference room and just wants to be here. But we acknowledge that this neighborhood doesn't have a tremendous amount of amenities yet. They're coming, and so we're trying to build in some early. Help build a snowballing effect for the rest of the projects that are coming. That's
great. Totally appreciate that. And then I thought I saw that there was a potential for a shuttle stop somewhere. I think you're still developing your transportation plan, and I would presume there would be some type of shuttle service or ride share service that you'll be going into greater detail at some point.
Absolutely. We will be investing in a TDM, which is required by zoning, of course. I think as we have spoken with Public Works, and they've shown us earlier elements of the Bay Shore Highway improvement. And so we're trying to work with staff to make sure that those shuttle stops are not duplicates. And so that we're just trying to read the tea leaves of what's coming, and make sure that it's a fully functional neighborhood, and there's just not a one-off project.
Right, great. And then just lastly, we'd love to see the next go around some development on how you might use that entertainment podium that I think was identified near the corner of the south building. Is that what being proposed?
We in those steps, and I'll let Renee speak to the steps and the seating, I think a little bit better, but they can be multifaceted. They can serve as places to eat lunch. They can serve as places to get outside, or in a circumstance, if there wanted to be a congregation, then you could be elevated to others. But Renee, maybe you can speak further to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think of them as terraces rather than just steps. And as we develop the design, we'll be weaving in plant material, places for people to sit, places for people to lean against, as well as people to go up and down, as a part of general circulation.
Okay. Oh, and I lied. I had one more other quick one. I don't see where the bike storage is on the north building.
We had it shown in the corner of, I would be the southwest corner of that building. However, when we're going to develop the ground floor plan further to show where bike storage is, to build on your question earlier about having breakout rooms, that area may want not to be bike storage. It may want to be a conference boardroom that could be more smaller, more intimate than a larger scale room. Another concept that we wanted to make sure that we're thinking about was having bicycles roll through the lobby and amenity spaces. We've thought about outdoor access into those interior rooms, and that will be developed further with our ground floor plan. So that's forthcoming.
Okay, great. Thank you very much and wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I appreciate the amount of effort being put into this. There's a lot of information here for us to see, and I think you've done a great job of putting forth a good team and putting forth a good project. My question goes to a little bit different area. I kind of, when I visited the site, I felt that I was actually surprised at how much higher Bayshore is than most of your property, and how steeply Malcolm tails away from Bayshore going towards the middle of the area. And so I would encourage some pretty good site sections through Malcolm to better understand that connection. Because in plan, your connection from building to building looks fabulous, but it's not that flat. And so I don't know if it's maybe, I think you may find that it goes down steeper than you think, or than I think. And I don't know if it's a bridge opportunity to connect them and allow that to go underneath. I don't know, but it just really felt like that street went down quickly. And so it feels to me like it's going to be really hard to make those connections across, given how much height variation you're going to have. And I just feel like that whole sidewalk from Bayshore all the way back to both of your crosswalks, that in itself is going to be a skateboard ramp. So just something that if you haven't had the opportunity to get those sections, look through those sections all the way through the street there, it would be a worthwhile exercise, I think.
Point very well taken. I mean, we've had probably more conversations on datums and sea level rise than I think this group probably wants to hear. But I would say that we've really tried to think thoughtfully about it. We did explore a bridge because it was a public street that wasn't able to be done. We thought the next best alternative, though, was a traffic calming tabletop that would make a very deliberate connection for the plazas. And when considering the pedestrian realm, we wanted to bring on a group that had real experience with sea level rise, and that was Renee and his team. And so we're trying to take what could be those disadvantages and turn them into accents and opportunities. And so that's what we're up to.
100% agree. And I can see, and I can see in some of the way that you've created the space that you are dealing with those datums. It's just, like I said, that existing street is not going to be nice to you. So it's got, that sidewalk is just a downhill plow. And so I'm worried as you try to create connection points, how well those tabletops are going to work, when in reality, it's not flat at all. It's still going to be heavily angled. So anyway, that was my piece. Everybody else had really great comments for you. And you've been doing a great job of looking forward on this. And I think that the next version of this will be really good for us to see. So with that just got us through our questions, huh? So now we need to go to the public. Do you have any more questions, might I say, for our applicants before we move on to the public? Seeing no hands, then I'm going to go ahead and open up to the public realm here. If you have a comment and wish to say something, now's the time to raise your hand and get involved. Okay, looks like we have a hand. Mr. Delahunty, it looks like you're in. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions. You need to unmute yourself.
Right there.
There you go.
Hi, there we go. I own the building down the street at 845. And the biggest problem I have, the project looks lovely and is a great improvement. However, I'm very concerned over the parking. If anybody, I've been out there for over 50 years. My father actually built the second building out there, so on Cowan Road. So we've had a long history there. And two things, 237 off-site parking. I find that kind of hard to understand. There are no parking spots. When pre-pandemic, there was literally fighting for parking spaces on the street because the Marriott was full and all the people that worked there got there in the morning, 6 in the morning, took all the spots. Happily, our building has enough parking, but it is crowded. So I don't see any possibility for a building these size to accommodate the parking they'll need. So I'd like that addressed. Also, if they want to know what it looks like during floods, they only had to be there a month ago. That is only the second time in 50 years that I can remember where the street was totally impassable, but it was flooded and flooded our building. So I'd like to know if there's any way of addressing something like that, because when you mentioned the steepness of Malcolm Road, that is true. And any kind of so-called tabletop will create a waterfall towards our properties. So please address the parking.
Traffic.
Great.
Traffic.
I'm good. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Do we have any other hands up at this time? I'm not seeing any. Do we have any electronic communication tonight?
Chair Schmidt, if I may address that concern very quickly.
Yes, you may.
I believe it's a clarification about off-street parking. The north building does not have a parking garage on it. And so we've consolidated all the parking into the parking garage, which has 2 access points, Stanton Road and Malcolm. And that was by design to try and minimize and spread the burden of parking. So apologies for the interruption.
And if I'm not mistaken, your requirement was 700 and some spaces and you're providing 800 and some spaces. So
That's
you're not
correct.
providing a deficit and you're not asking for a variance on the number, you're asking a variance for the location.
That's correct.
Okay. So I hope that that helps with the caller's question. Okay, so we don't have any electronic communication, correct?
We did have one from Mr. Delhanty, very similar to what he just said. There was one item that was raised in that, which was he had a question about construction parking. And that is something that is part of the building permit review. So there would be a plan for where to park the construction crew vehicles during construction, just to respond to that question from him as well.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'm going to move back to my fellow commissioners for comments and concerns. Vice Chair Loftus. Go to unmute.
Yeah, I figured that out. You know, in general, I really like the project. It's exciting to see this going in down there. And we got one of the letters we got said, yeah, that site has got a lot of bad buildings on it and they need to be replaced. And this will be a very, very interesting project down there and a catalyst for further change, I'm sure. You got a sense of my concerns with my questions. I think that some more thought needs to be given to the balancing of how the space is activated and where it's activated. I'm skeptical that lobbies actually activate the space. And while I like the tabletop a lot, I think that's a nice thing. What you've really done is you've created this sort of sense of passageway. The tabletop is a passageway across the street between 2 lobbies. And I really don't believe that we're going to see that many people coming from offsite to go sit with their laptops in those lobbies. it's not like downtown. It's not like KPMG downtown in San Francisco where lots of people go in there and hang out. I personally, but I'm going back to the question that was asked about the connection to Bayshore. I personally would be an advocate for the mid-block crossing. I think if there was a way to drag the green edges of the Bayshore over to the green at the face of the new building and make the connection back to the plaza there, I think that would be desirable. I don't see anything particularly useful about a signalized corner crosswalk over to the Marriott. You could do it on either side, but neither one of them seemed very significant. It's not a cross street, it's a T street. And I think you'd get more, personally, I think you get more bang for your buck attaching directly to the Bayshore and receiving that into some special event at the face of the building in the landscape. So that would be my vote for that. It took me a while to figure it out, but I'm really glad that there's two ways in and out of the parking garage. And it sounds like from the staff report that the primary entrance and exit to the parking garage is off Stanton, not Malcolm, which I think is a positive thing because you are creating the tabletop and the plaza on either side. In general, I like it. The glass boxes, I think, are fine for the office space itself. I would love to see considerably more attention paid to what the ground level looks like. I would be less convinced that if the glass just drove itself to the ground in the same way, that it would be that inviting for anything. So whatever the character of the glass is up above, if it's still glass down below, it probably wants to be something considerably different. Certainly more transparent than what we might get up above. We're just not that far along yet, but do pay attention to and tell a compelling story to us about the ground floor architectural treatment. That will have a lot to do with whether this is successful or not. In general, I think the project is terrific. I heard that the comment in the background to ask the question about traffic. That's certainly an environmental concern out here. It does help that there's more than that. It is so close to the freeway and there's more than one way to get to the freeway, and that you've got more than one way to get out of the parking garage goes a long way towards distributing the traffic. There's no way that all that traffic goes away. So the traffic study, for purposes of the environmental study, traffic is going to be a key study, I think. I think that's all I've got to say. I think it's going to be a really nice project. Well done.
Great, thank you, sir. Commissioner Toronos.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I agree with Commissioner Loftus. I think it's going to be a nice project out there, and I'd like to see this area developed. As an aside, I hope that the cafe and coffee shop amenities don't have as many flies as Gulliver's did, at the tail end of its lifespan. But in regards to the entitlements, I can make the findings for the variance. I think that there are some exceptional circumstances with the way that they're developing the properties. It's going to be one project clearly, and I think it will read, act, and feel like one project. And so therefore, I think that there won't be much confusion as to people working there as to where they should go and park. So I think that the exceptional circumstance of having Malcolm as a public street that bisects the project means that they have two different and distinct defined parcels. But I think it's good to have the majority of the parking where they've located it on that south parcel. So I could make the findings for that. I'm compelled by Commissioner Loftus's argument in regards to the signal crossing. I was a little on the fence going either way, but I see the idea of making a connection to the Bay Trail. The idea being that it might be one way to encourage office users to just come down out of the building and use that, and take advantage of that proximity. So I think a crossing in that location, sort of at the mid block, I think would be helpful, both for this project as well as the neighborhood in general. I had a similar concern as Commissioner Pfaff in regards to shade and shadow. So I think it would be helpful just both for the project sponsors and also for us to see, how shade and shadow is going to work its way across through and over that plaza. So I think that would be helpful. And then again, I think some additional detail on the interior and exterior connections at the amenities and lobby spaces at that ground floor, I think are important for us to see next time when this comes back for action, both in the horizontal plane, as we were talking about in terms of the connections, but also, as Commissioner Loftus was saying, in terms of the vertical plane, just how those ground floor spaces are going to work, both in 2D and 3D, visually from the sidewalk, from Bay Shore, et cetera, but also just in and amongst themselves, the connections between the hardscape, landscape, interior and exterior. I think just seeing some detail from between SWA and Perkins and Will and the other team members for how those spaces are going to work, I think are important so that we can make sure that not just that we've vetted it, but that they've looked closely at it to give the project its best opportunity for success. Thanks.
Great, thank you, sir. Commissioner
Oh,
Gall?
and the bird safe glazing. I have to say that. So thank you.
Glad you got that in there. Yeah, I'll be real quick, but I just want to reiterate that I think that there needs to be some art or some mural work or something there to to enhance the public interest in that plaza, along with the signage. I following up on the comments from Commissioner Turnus and Loftus. I think that we need to have some signage to get people to the Bay Trail. Again, it doesn't really sell itself from this side of the street over there. You really almost miss it. But I think that the mid-block crossing is really a good idea. The retail amenities are one of the things that I can't say enough that I really want to see that develop for the public. I walked the Burlingame Point project today, and there is a coffee shop that's open to the public, and there's a bike shop that's open to the public, which are great, but they have a lot of the private spaces in there. It looks like you can't get to it unless you're from the inside of the building. They're really for the people in the office, and that really wasn't what I was hoping to see when we did that project or approved that project. So as much as you can give in the retail or the amenities spaces, I think it would be a great improvement, because the fact is that Gulliver's was once a very popular spot, and you had to make a reservation. You can fill a restaurant out there. Just go over to the New England Lobster Company at lunch. They could use twice as much space as what they have. Even, I don't know if you guys have been to Mr. Teriyaki, but he's full all the time. He's got a small space, but he's got good food. So if you put a restaurant space in there, you can fill it. And then that's just going to give more life to that plaza and to the whole building. Yeah, I think that we do need to have a traffic study. I agree with Commissioner Loftus. I really was encouraged by the multiple access points by car to the parking garage on both of the sites. And the only other concern I had was the noise that may be created by the building if you're going to be doing pile driving or if you're going to be drilling, as well as the amount of trucks that are going to come out. So I'd like to see that in the environmental study also. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. For myself, I'm in support of the mid-block solution that my fellow commissioners have brought up for all the same reasons. So there's my piece of feedback for that. I'm still have a lot of concern over the transition of land from Bay Shore down through Malcolm and through the end of this project. I think that there's a lot of slope going on. I think that there's a lot going on with those plazas and the various heights in those, and to make them successful. And we're seeing them largely in plan or distant 3D view. And so really hard to tell how those things line up. So whether it be vertical sections through some of those areas to better understand the the touch points from one to the other. I think that that's important to know. And again, it's probably less for us and it's more for them to know that they've taken care of it. Commissioner Pfaff brought up an excellent point on how tall these buildings are in that plaza. And then sitting there looking at the plaza having an 8-story building on its southern edge, meaning that 3/4 of the day, the shadow from that building is going to own that plaza. So it could actually be a cold and not very inviting place to go. So I think that those are definitely some environmental study areas for them to look at and work with. I think the plaza on the north property actually might be the nicest place out of that, and that the south property plaza is going to be cold. So those are some of my concerns with it. And then to the caller's credit, having been there for a long time, my concern of Malcolm steepness and the flooding that we just went through, and where all that water's going from the Marriott property, it's going down Malcolm. So I hope that we are doing something with that, because I definitely saw some big storm drains along Malcolm that aren't attractive now. So as we address the water and flooding through that area, I think it's an important piece towards this environmental review. Otherwise, I think the project looks great. There's a great opportunity out there, and those lots definitely need it. And this is the kind of project that we've been looking for in this location, and I think it does the least amount of traffic impact to our community as opposed to other places that a project like this would want to go. So otherwise, I think I support. So me being last, we now need to move towards a motion. Don't we?
Actually, on these, it will come back for regular action because that includes environmental review, so no motion is necessary.
So this is just feedback.
That's correct.
Okay. Fabulous. Then I don't have to do
It's a waste
anything.
of time is what you're saying. It's a big waste.
You can make a motion, but it's going to end up in the same place anyways.
But I wanted Richard to have to make a motion. He's so darn good at it. I aspire to be that good one of these days. So anyway, so then unless there's further comment on this particular item, that finishes our design review study items, correct? Perfect. Moving on. Do we have any commissioners' reports tonight? Seeing no hands, then moving on to director's report.
There are no FYIs this week. Just very briefly from the last city council meeting, you may have read in the Daily Journal that there was further discussion of a longer term program for the parklets, which includes fees and rents to make it a more sustainable program over the long term. The city council discussed cleaning fees, which the parklets have represented, more staff time in terms of maintaining the areas around the parklets, as well as the sidewalks themselves, which are getting more wear and tear and grease and grime and everything as a result. The parklets are very successful, but just need more maintenance. So the council adopted a fee of $250 per month for cleaning, and that would begin to be assessed on April 1st. That was it from that council meeting.
Great. Besides Commissioner Camarado saying what a wonderful job you did this morning, is there 3 bullet points out of your SB9 knowledge now that you would care to share with us as wisdom?
So I think the group that was we made the presentation to were real estate agents. So it was interesting to me that some of the questions were related to neighborhood character and compatibility. There was also some interest. I think some realtors have probably had some clients who may be interested in doing some development. So there was some nuts and bolts. I think generally the bulk of interest is ensuring that the projects are compatible. And I tried to emphasize that the regulations that have been put together to date here in Burlingame are pretty much patterned on the single family regulations, particularly in terms of the size and the bulk and the setbacks of structures, so that they at least have that same massing as a single family home. And there were some questions about lot splits and kind of the, what advantages there may or may not be. I do see Commissioner Camarado's hand up. She was in the meeting, so I'd welcome her feedback as well.
I think the one really important thing that came up listening to Donna and Kevin today was about Proposition 13 and the tax ramification it might have on homeowners that have Proposition 13. And so I thought that was very important, especially for realtors when you're working with people that are later in age that had Proposition 13, and how is that going to impact their taxes if they do a lot split? So I think that was, and I think we need some more clarity around that. And I don't know that we have attorneys that have been able to kind of figure that piece out. So, so that's going to be kind of a moving target, I think. So Kevin, I mean, if you get any wind of how that's going to pan out, I'd really love to hear about that.
That's a good point. There were a lot of questions, and it really comes down to when is a property reassessed. And what the broker, I appreciate, kind of gave advice to think about that sooner than later. You don't want to be surprised and think that you've got a tax base and then find out that the project is creating a reassessment, and all of a sudden your taxes are significantly different than what you've been used to. So yeah, we can certainly share, but that's an area I'm not myself familiar with.
Or maybe who we can talk to, who might have that information, what attorneys might have that information, or CPAs. That might be good for everyone involved.
Sure.
Would that not be a county thing through we pay our taxes now? I mean, they're the ones that are ultimately going to enforce it. But it would seem to me, if you're going to do a lot split, you kind of deserve to be reassessed on both lots.
Yeah, I would think, and without kind of going into a full discussion here, but that's my sense is more often than not, it will create a reassessment. But we can confirm that. We can either talk to the assessor's office, get a little more clarity, or perhaps as Commissioner Camarado mentions, talk to a tax attorney who would, maybe has already thought about this. SB 9 does have some kind of, odd what ifs, and I think those are the what ifs that we'd want to get a little more information on.
Well, it's certainly not something you can give advice about.
It's not, and to the broker's credit, she said, don't try to do this, send them to the professionals. Because yeah, I'm not even sure it's been fully, thought out or determined. So it's a work in progress, and it's good to talk to the professionals.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate people letting me bug Kevin just a few more minutes of your evening. So unless there's anything else we need to go over, I can go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:43 p.m. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.
Good night.
See you guys.
Thanks.